There are arguments where, after they end, no one truly wins. The speaker walks away feeling validated, convinced they were right. The listener departs with the conviction that the other person was foolish. And the only thing left behind, lying silent in the darkness between them, is the truth. Marenpiri's book, Win Every Argument*, emerges from that very darkness. It's not a guide on how to speak eloquently to defeat others, but rather a map that reveals the winding paths where reason often loses its way. In a world overflowing with information, where words can spread faster than thoughts, people don't lose because of a lack of knowledge, but because of their inability to recognize when they are deceiving themselves. Marenpiri doesn't address the reader with a didactic tone, but rather as a quiet, sharp, and at times, ruthless observer. He unlatches each logical box humanity uses to defend its views, only to show us that inside are layers of subtle fallacies, wrapped in belief and habit. What makes this book unsettling isn't its eloquent examples, but the way it makes readers realize that everyone can resort to fallacies, even those who believe they stand on the side of truth in every argument, every statement, even in defenses born of goodwill. We can still distort reality simply to make the world conform to our own ideas. And it is in that very moment, when truth must bow to emotion, that fallacy is born. A question seems to constantly arise after each page. Do people truly want to know the truth, or do they merely want to hear what brings them comfort? Because if all reasoning is used only to reinforce beliefs, rather than to challenge them, then intelligence merely makes us wrong more systematically. This book doesn't teach you how to win debates, it teaches you how to think clearly. It forces readers to re-examine not only how others argue, but also how they themselves use language to self-justify. Each example in the book is like a mirror, reflecting thinking habits that people assume are harmless. When reading it, one cannot help but wonder, in how many arguments throughout life, how many times did we genuinely seek the truth, and how many times did we just want to prove we weren't wrong? Humans always believe they think rationally, that their words are built upon a foundation of truth. But simply observe an argument, and you'll see that truth doesn't reside in the argument itself, but in how the argument is twisted. When people learn to bend reason to serve their ego, fallacies are born, like shattered mirrors reflecting distorted images. And in those fragments, everyone can imagine they are winning. In an *** ad hominem attack, abusive comparison, people don't attack the reasoning but the speaker. Just place him next to an image that evokes contempt, and the audience immediately finds him more detestable. No evidence needed, just imagine a politician being compared to a snake or an artist likened to a clown on stage. It sounds harmless, but contempt is conveyed through imagery, and reason is cast aside. Thus, comparison becomes a velvet-trapped dagger. Next is the * fallacy of accent emphasis. Simply by shifting the emphasis of a word, the meaning of a sentence can be completely inverted. Language is a living creature, and intonation is its heartbeat. When someone says, "You can go," they could be granting permission or dismissing you, depending on the emphasis. It's in this subtle shift that the entire world of words becomes a trick in speeches. A single word emphasized incorrectly is enough to make the audience hear something never actually said. Truth is altered not by lies, but by accent. When someone tries to break a rule by using an exceptional example, they fall into the * fallacy of accent *. They cite a rare case to negate a general principle. If returning a loan is right, why would you return a weapon to a madman? This reasoning sounds plausible, but it's only true in a peculiar corner of reality. Clever people always use exceptions to dissolve rules because humans always fear what is more rigid than themselves. Next is the * fallacy of false cause, confusion between cause and effect. People observe an effect and conclude that it must have come from a single cause. The cat died, someone shouted. It must have been bitten by a rabid hedgehog. This reverse inference is a classic logical trap, a manifestation of the desire to control the world with a straight line of causality. But life has no straight lines, it's a spiderweb of countless causes. When we assert that an effect is proof of a cause, we turn reasoning into divination. In *** amphiboly, ambiguous grammar, asterisk, or double meaning, words become a smoky haze. People say, "The Duchess has a wonderful ship, but her bottom is full of barnacles." No one knows whether her bottom refers to the Duchess or the ship. This ambiguity creates an opportunity for the speaker to retreat at any time. If they are right, they are prophets. If wrong, they just say, "You misunderstood." The entire world of words appears as a labyrinth where every turn leads to a fallacy. False analogy is also a double-edged sword. When people believe that things similar in one aspect will be similar in all aspects, they fall into the fallacy of false comparison. Society is not a human body, so having one controlling head doesn't make it healthier. The body dies when the head stops working, but society dies when the head thinks for the whole. Yet, countless dynasties and ideologies have relied on such analogies to govern. They forget that metaphors are not evidence. When fallacies don the cloak of antiquity, they become the asterisk appeal to tradition asterisk. Our ancestors did it this way, so we cannot do otherwise. But ancestors once believed the sun revolved around the earth, and that illness was caused by divine spirits. Time does not turn errors into truth, it merely dusts over memory. However, people find comfort in the old. They confuse long-standing with correct. Familiarity makes errors more acceptable than new truths. Then comes asterisk blind faith and preconceived notions asterisk, where people erect mental barriers against reality. When Galileo pointed his telescope to the sky, those in cloaks of power said, "No need to look, we already know there are 7 celestial bodies." Truth, then, was not obscured by clouds, but by belief and doctrine. People chose to discard evidence rather than prejudice. The world, therefore, does not lack intelligent people, only those brave enough to let truth scratch their beliefs. And finally, in this opening sequence, is the appeal to force, the power of violence in argument asterisk, where the logically weak use fear to replace persuasion. If you don't agree, your family will suffer. If that nation doesn't listen, war will teach them. This is no longer an argument but a command. When people use force to defend truth, they admit that truth itself is no longer strong enough to stand on its own. When words are replaced by threats, reason retreats, leaving a vacuum for fear to dominate. From subtle insults to manipulative intonation, from exaggerated exceptions to the raw power of the stick, this entire journey shows us one thing: reason is not harmed by the ignorant, but abused by the intelligent. People learn how to speak correctly, then learn how to use that correctness to conceal what is wrong. In this game, fallacy is not just a fault of thinking. It is the ego's self-preservation instinct against the light of truth. In the dichotomy of reason, humans often seek simplicity to the point of cruelty. When the world is forced into only 2 options, everything becomes easy to understand, but also easy to get wrong. People say, "Either you are with me or you are against me." No one asks if there's a third path, or simply if no one wants to fight at all. The trap lies in the fact that if there are only 2 directions, one is compelled to choose. And the one who creates those choices has already won in politics, in love, even in ethics. Such lines are always drawn to manipulate. Bifurcation is the art of those who fear complexity, because complexity makes deceit difficult to survive. Then comes the scientific jargon fallacy asterisk, where academic words are thrown out like a white smoke screen. The more incomprehensible a statement, the more the listener believes it is profound. When an orator says, "Behavioral units are influenced by nonlinear interactions of semantic models," it merely means that people influence each other when they talk. But the complex layer of language makes listeners nod, hesitant to object. True knowledge clarifies, while fallacies use knowledge to obscure. That's why those who know a lot are often more dangerous than those who know little, because they have enough words to bend the truth without anyone realizing it. When logic is twisted into false choices, it's called a *** false dilemma ***. A Greek mother once advised her child, "If you tell the truth, people will hate you. If you lie, the gods will punish you." But the intelligent child knows that not everything lies in 2 opposing extremes. The trap is in believing that life is always either this or that, while for the most part, it is both this and that. Truth rarely lies at the 2 poles. It hides between seemingly contradictory things. When an argument devours itself, we fall into ** circular reasoning ***. Someone says, "I am honest," because my friend says so, and my friend is honest because I vouch for him. Each statement becomes a mirror reflecting the other, neither touching reality. It's like a government planning growth by asking companies, "If the nation grows by 4%, how will your companies develop? Then concluding that the entire economy will grow by 4% because all companies predicted it. Circular logic is a prison for those who love certainty. They build walls from propositions and lock themselves within, believing the outside world is as neatly rounded as their theories. The asterisk fallacy of complex question asterisk is an ancient trap that anyone who has ever been asked, "Have you stopped beating your wife?" understands. Answering yes or no implies guilt. The trick of the questioner is that they force you to admit something that has never been proven. Today's world is still full of such questions. Why do you oppose peace? How do you plan to evade taxes? A question can be a condemnation if the questioner knows how to hide guilt within the words. When people see a part and think it's the whole, they fall into the asterisk fallacy of composition asterisk. A team of all-stars doesn't necessarily mean a strong team. A government of all geniuses can be a disaster, because when excellent individuals are confident in themselves, they forget that true strength lies in the harmony between people. What is true for a part is not necessarily true for the whole. But the human ego always wants to believe that if I am good, my organization is also good. Conversely, ambiguity in quantification makes words dangerous. When someone says, "All politicians are liars," we assume they mean every single one, but in reality, they only know some. This vagueness turns observation into slander and observation into prejudice. Words like everyone, anyone, no one are distorted mirrors reflecting the speaker's emotions more than reality, and an audience in collective outrage won't realize they've just been led into a labyrinth of a statement lacking a true subject. Then there are arguments that betray themselves, like someone standing between two mirrors, unsure of who they are. When a father tells his child, "Nothing is certain, therefore you must believe in experience," he doesn't realize that this very statement negates itself. Or when a philosopher asserts that everything needs a cause, so the universe must have been created by God, he leaves a loophole. If everything needs a cause, where did God come from? The asterisk fallacy of negation asterisk shows the limits of language. When humans use finite concepts to grasp the infinite, they ultimately trap themselves in their own net. Contradiction in premises asterisk is like two rivers flowing in opposite directions colliding. Someone says, "Everything can die, but God cannot because God is everything." The statement sounds majestic, but the logic breaks at its very center. When two premises cannot both be true, every conclusion built upon them is meaningless. From a contradiction, one can prove anything, even that the moon is made of green cheese. The danger lies not in the logic, but in the belief that one is reasoning correctly. For once people believe everything they say is logical, they lose the ability to doubt. And that is the moment when fallacy triumphs over the world of reason, which seemed so solid, yet turns out to be fragile. Those who thought they were seeking truth were actually just seeking to win arguments, and each such victory pushes the truth one step further away. In the worship of money asterisk, people imagine that material value is the measure of truth. When money becomes proof of what is right, reason has been bought without a contract. People say, "If he's that rich, he must be right." But wealth only proves that a person knows how to win in the social game, not in the game of truth. Someone can sell dreams and profit from others' beliefs without touching the truth. In this fallacy, the listener is persuaded not by evidence, but by the glimmer of assets. Money can make a liar speak golden words and silence the wise. Next is the asterisk fallacy of correlation causation confusion asterisk, a trap that makes people see patterns in random events. When two things happen together, people are quick to assume one caused the other. Someone says, "Many people who drink coffee suffer from insomnia, so coffee causes insomnia," forgetting that those who suffer from insomnia might seek out coffee. Coincidence is inflated into destiny. In the modern world, where data piles up, this type of fallacy becomes more sophisticated. A beautiful chart, a matching number, and immediately people see a sacred connection. But correlation is not causation, and truth lies not in the curve of a graph, but in the understanding of essence. Sometimes people choose to obscure all other possibilities to coerce others into following them. This is the asterisk black or white fallacy, eliminating other options, asterisk, where one knows how to dazzle the opponent with the fear of isolation. They set up two paths, one bright, one dark, and then say that only fools step into the darkness. If you don't support this project, then you are against the future. That statement is both a judgment and a verdict. This fallacy of discrediting other options is a game of power, because when there is only one logical choice, people stop thinking. When they cannot win by reason, people begin to retreat in definition asterisk. They change the meaning of a word in the middle of a battle to save face. If caught being wrong, they say, "I didn't mean all, but most." When questioned about a promise, they redefine promise as intention. Each time, the truth is stretched like a string, losing its shape the more it is pulled. Retreating in definition is how people turn defeat into victory, not by evidence, but by wordplay. There's also the denying the antecedent fallacy asterisk, where people confuse cause and effect. If it rains, the road is wet. They conclude, the road is not wet, therefore it didn't rain. They forget that someone might have just covered the road with a tarp. When logic is inverted, truth is also inverted. This fallacy is a product of a mind that craves order. People want the world to operate like a mathematical equation, where every if implies a then, but life doesn't follow such conditions. It has thousands of variables that reason cannot encapsulate. When people generalize recklessly, they create the illusion that a few examples define the entire world. That foreigner is mean, so all of them are like that. Such statements appear daily, not just in pubs, but on podiums. The hasty generalization fallacy allows the speaker to simplify reality and the listener to be angry without needing understanding. In politics, religion, and everyday life, it is the easiest tool to divide people. An absolute assertion is always more appealing than a complex truth. Then comes the asterisk fallacy of division asterisk, where people assume that what is true for the whole is also true for each part. They see a winning team and assume every player is excellent. They see a prosperous nation and believe every citizen is happy. In reality, collective strength can hide countless individual weaknesses. Truth is rarely evenly distributed like sunlight, but the human mind always seeks uniformity. The beauty of the whole makes us forget the cracks in individual bricks. The first series of fallacies concludes with the asterisk submission of reason to emotion asterisk. People don't win by reason, they win by tears. When the arguer talks about hungry children, the listener forgets to ask for actual data. When a politician says, "Do this for your mother, for your country," he doesn't need to prove it's right, because emotion has already conquered reason before reason could even speak. The appeal to emotion is the pinnacle of the art of manipulation because it doesn't need to persuade, only to make the listener feel. And so, the circle closes, from insult to pity, from mocking laughter to tears. All are different sides of the same coin where reason is exchanged for human emotion. In their effort to find what is right, people are swept away by the beauty of language. They believe they are winning the argument, but in reality, they are losing the game of truth. Language, often seen as a means to convey truth, sometimes becomes the thin veil that obscures it when the same word is used with two different meanings. The speaker can lead the listener into a labyrinth unknowingly. Someone says, "No one is free to commit crimes," then concludes, "Therefore, no one is truly free." In those two sentences, freedom subtly transformed from the right to act legally to an absolute capability. Language, when not kept within the bounds of reason, becomes a distorted mirror reflecting human thought. And so, what seems logical becomes a sweet trap, where people deceive themselves with familiar words. When people resort to appealing to common knowledge asterisk, reason begins to give way to prejudice. Of course, the sky is blue. Every child knows that. But when asked why, the speaker is flustered because they don't truly know, they merely repeat a collective belief. What is called obvious is not truth, but a thinking habit repeated so often that no one dares to question it. It is a subtle form of intellectual laziness, where the crowd becomes a safe haven for those who fear loneliness in their understanding. The idea of asterisk exceptions proving the rule is a sweet paradox of thought. People say, it's true that every rule has exceptions, and that proves the rule still exists. But exceptions don't strengthen a rule, they only prove that the rule is imperfect. When humans turn anomalies into evidence for what is right, they lull themselves into a false sense of certainty. Every exception is a crack in the wall of logic. And instead of repairing it, they paint over it, praising the wall for its newfound flexibility. When two negative premises are used simultaneously, an argument becomes meaningless. No one trusts a liar, and no honest person trusts him. This statement traps itself in contradiction. Logic cannot yield a conclusion from two negatives, but humans love the drama of paradox. They don't need to understand, only to feel that something sounds right. And so, reasoning becomes a linguistic performance, no longer a tool of thought. Then comes the asterisk fallacy of existence asterisk asterisk, where people believe that simply by uttering something, it must exist. When we mention a unicorn, it suddenly has a place in our minds, and therefore seems to have a place in the world. People conclude, if we can imagine absolute justice, then it must exist. But the ability to imagine is not proof of existence. In their yearning to believe in perfection, humans have inadvertently created illusory entities, and then bowed down to them like gods. When data is used post hoc, after the event asterisk to prove what was predetermined, truth is swapped for statistics. A government declares a policy successful, then cherry-picks numbers to prove it, forgetting that data comes after the intention. Statistics, originally evidence, now become a cosmetic tool for arguments. People don't look at the truth, but at the chart, where curves are bent just enough to look reasonable. Accuracy is no longer a quality of thought, but a product of aesthetics. Trimming the scope of definition is the art of those who know that merely changing the boundaries of words can change the entire outcome. When rebutted that not all patriots are honest, they immediately correct, I only meant asterisk true asterisk patriots. And so, the scope is narrowed just enough to escape refutation. This is how people build linguistic fortresses, where every word is guarded so no one can trespass, and truth is left outside the city walls. When a proposition is asterisk incorrectly inverted asterisk, we get an illusion of logic. If all intelligent people read books, it doesn't mean all people who read books are intelligent. It sounds reasonable, but only because we asterisk want asterisk to believe it. Humans love the feeling of order, so they readily accept the inverse of an argument without checking. The smoothness of the phrase makes them forget that meaning cannot be inverted like a logical mirror. Once used as linguistic ornament, logic betrays its own purpose. False precision is the most dangerous illusion of the modern age. When people say, this policy will increase national happiness by 3.47%, that number sounds like a scientific guarantee. But happiness is not measured in percentages, and that number is merely a way to deceive human insecurity. The more detailed, the more people believe, even if the detail is not true. False precision is what makes fallacies wear the cloak of knowledge, making listeners feel they are standing on solid ground, when in fact they are standing on fine sand. In all these sleights of hand, language is no longer a tool but an autonomous entity. It breathes, transforms, and betrays its master. Humans use language to grasp the world, then are devoured by language itself. They no longer speak to understand each other, but to win against each other. And while they argue over words, truth stands silently in the background, unnoticed by anyone. When the belief in probability is misunderstood, people begin to see patterns in random sequences. The asterisk gambler's fallacy makes people believe that because a coin has landed on tails 5 times, the next time it will surely be heads. But probability doesn't remember. Luck has no memory. Humans, inherently unable to tolerate the chaos of randomness, create an illusion of balance as a way to reassure themselves in casinos or on the stock market. They still believe the universe owes them a win, and thus they lose, not due to bad luck, but due to the logic of false belief. Then comes the asterisk asterisk genetic fallacy, fallacy of origin asterisk, where people judge the value of an idea based on where it originated, not on its inherent nature. A philosophy is rejected simply because it came from an enemy. An invention is doubted because its creator once made mistakes. They forget that truth has no nationality, and correct words can come from the mouth of a wrongdoer. When origin becomes the measure of truth, humans make themselves slaves to prejudice. Those who are cunning in argument often hide their uncertainty with vague language. They say, perhaps, it seems, according to some studies. Each of these words is an escape route, so when challenged they can say, I never claimed it was certain. In science, caution is a virtue, but in argument, it can be armor for those who dare not take responsibility. Evasive language allows people to exist in the safe zone of ambiguity, where they can be both right and never wrong. It's a more subtle form of the double talk fallacy ***, where the speaker skillfully holds two possibilities at once. It might rain, but it might also be sunny. Whatever the outcome, they can say, I predicted it. People are captivated by such cleverness, the cleverness of someone who always wins because they never dare to make a bet. But in the world of thought, ambiguity is not wisdom, it is evasion. Double talk is the art of those who refuse to take responsibility for their words. Then appears the ad hominem personal attack, the oldest weapon in any argument. When reason fails, people resort to attacking the person. He's not trustworthy. Look at how he dresses. In that moment, the focus shifts from the issue to the speaker. They think that humiliating the opponent is equivalent to defeating the argument. Direct personal attack is the ego's cry when cornered. It does not seek truth, it seeks dominance. Indirect personal attack is more subtle. Instead of insulting, it questions motives. Of course, he says that he's paid to say it. Here, people don't refute the reasoning, they devalue it by questioning the speaker's intent. In society, this fallacy is so common it becomes a reflex. When someone says something we dislike, we find reasons to discredit * them, not their idea. Truth is defeated not by argument, but by animosity. There are also times when people use appeal to ignorance as evidence, believing that because no one has proven something false, it must be true. No one has proven aliens exist, but no one has proven they don't. This reasoning doesn't stand, yet it holds power because it relies on the fear of a knowledge vacuum. Humans hate the unknown, so they fill it with belief. And when belief is spoken with certainty, it becomes a temporary truth. Sometimes people red herring intentionally deflect when they cannot answer a question. They replace the question with another. Have you stopped beating your wife? Is answered with, I love my family. The answer sounds noble, but it doesn't address the issue. In public debates, this happens frequently. The question is swapped. Listeners are drawn into the rhythm of the words, and by the time they realize, the conversation has veered in another direction. Red herring is the technique of those who know how to control a crowd, not those who seek truth. When the * scope of logic is misapplied, meaningless conclusions appear, yet retain a semblance of plausibility. From a few individual cases, people infer a rule for the whole. They forget that a part cannot represent the entirety. This is a common error in politics and media, where an action is exaggerated into an essence, and truth is replaced by symbols. Logic, originally born to protect truth, becomes a servant to prejudice. Laughter can also become a weapon, a gentle yet cruel fallacy. When people cannot refute an argument, they laugh. That laughter says, what you're saying is so ridiculous it doesn't even need a rebuttal. Laughter disarms the opponent, making the audience side with the one who laughs. It doesn't need to prove anything, only to instill the feeling that the other thing is shameful. In intellectual dialogues, humor should be an expression of freedom. But when misused, it becomes a way to kill thought through mockery. From belief in probability to the confident laughter of the self-assured, all demonstrate one thing. Human intellect doesn't succumb to ignorance, but to the illusion that it is always right. In the game of fallacies, whoever understands the workings of reason best is also the one who knows how to bend it the most. When reason is replaced by a *** reflexive rejection ***, every dialogue ends in silence. People don't need to prove anything, they just say, that's absurd. This brutal dismissal kills the argument at birth. No rebuttal, no analysis, just a wall of arrogance erected between speaker and listener. The scary thing is not that people don't understand, but that they no longer want * to understand. In that moment, truth is expelled from the conversation like an uninvited guest. Then appears the ** glorification of poverty **, a fallacy cloaked in morality. People say, the rich are dishonest, only the poor are pure. They confuse destitution with virtue. Poverty does not make anyone better, just as wealth does anyone worse. But humans love the romance of austerity, so they create the image of the poor as a symbol of conscience. Glorifying poverty is how society comforts itself, believing that at least in scarcity, there is something noble. In reality, it is merely the idealization by those who fear power and want to believe that morality always sides with the weak. When language is laced with * prejudice *, every word spoken carries an invisible blade. People no longer call them protesters but rioters, no longer prisoners but criminals, even before trial. Words become weapons to direct emotions, making listeners react before they can think. In the hands of power, language is no longer a tool to describe the world, but a tool to create it. The emotional language fallacy asterisk transforms the speaker into a director of perception, while the audience believes they are making their own decisions. When compassion is used to replace reason, truth is exchanged for emotion. Think of those poor children. That statement shuts down all counterarguments. Anyone opposing such an argument is deemed heartless. But pity, however noble, is not evidence. It only reflects human fear when confronted with cold, hard truth. Using compassion to persuade is to usurp the listener's morality, turning them into emotional hostages in societies rife with propaganda. This type of fallacy becomes a tool of governance because it makes people believe that following orders is an act of the heart. Then comes the asterisk repetition fallacy asterisk asterisk, where a falsehood, if repeated often enough, becomes something everyone knows. When a lie is broadcast on television every day, it gradually acquires the scent of truth. People grow tired of doubting, so they accept what is familiar. Repetition is the way to shorten the distance between falsehood and truth. It proves nothing, it merely confuses memory with belief. In the world of advertising, politics, and social media, this fallacy thrives more than ever. When people reject something new simply because they've never seen it, they slam shut the door of progress. Someone says, if that were true, why hasn't anyone thought of it yet? As if every truth must have a precedent. But history does not stand still, and things unproven are not therefore false. The appeal to tradition, or conservatism, is a beautiful cloak for the fear of change. It makes people believe they are defending order, when in fact they are stifling foresight. Conversely, there are also those who worship the new simply because it is new. They believe the old is outdated, and the new is always right. But new doesn't mean better, just as young isn't always wiser than old. Time doesn't determine value, it merely exposes nature. The new can be a repetition of the old in a different form, differing only in its paint job. Worshipping the new is a reflex of consumer society, where value is equated with continuous change. Appeal to popularity, bandwagon fallacy, becomes the strongest defensive wall of fallacy. If millions believe it, how can it be wrong? That question once led hundreds to the stake simply for daring to be different. The majority is not measured by truth, but by comfort. It is a refuge for those who fear intellectual solitude. But the crowd has no reason, only instinct. It can cheer someone today and demand their death tomorrow. Believing in the majority is the simplest way to avoid responsibility for one's own thoughts. From brutal denial to the applause of the crowd, all these fallacies share a common thread. Humans fear losing more than they fear being wrong. They would rather bend reason to preserve their honor than admit they are lost. In every argument, the truth often lies not between the two interlocutors, but is left behind, where neither bothers to look back. When language becomes a weapon, victory is no longer understanding, but the ability to silence others. And so, from the slippery slope to the straw man, reason continues to be pushed into the abyss of false wisdom. When people believe that truth always lies halfway between two extremes, they have replaced thinking with compromise. Perhaps you're half right and I'm half wrong. This statement sounds wise, but it's a way of avoiding the truth. Sometimes one side is entirely right and the other is entirely wrong. Dividing reason equally merely legitimizes error. Believing that truth always lies between two extremes is the fallacy of those who fear conflict. They choose tranquility over accuracy, harmony over honesty. And so, truth is diluted until it has no flavor left. Then comes the habit of asterisk simplistic blame asterisk asterisk, where complex problems are reduced to a single cause. When society is in disarray, they say, it's all one person's fault. When the economy is difficult, they say, it's the government's wrong policy. This attribution brings relief because if there's only one culprit, correction seems simple, but truth is never so tidy. Every phenomenon is the result of hundreds of interwoven causes, and pointing fingers at a single individual only helps people maintain the illusion of control. In arguments, people also like to nitpick over trivial details to avoid touching the core. Instead of refuting a point, they scrutinize spelling, tone, or presentation. A wrong word, a missing number, and the entire argument is dismissed. This trivializing fallacy is the tactic of those who have no real counterarguments. They weaken their opponent by making the conversation stray from the content. It doesn't kill reason, but it kills patience. When pressed, people easily defend themselves by *2 quoque, accusing back. The liar will respond, "You've lied before too." It sounds fair, but the actions of others don't make one's own actions right. Defending by reflection is a way to turn error into a norm. When everyone is wrong, no one feels the need to be right anymore. This is the final stage of self-justification, when morality becomes a competition to see who is less bad. Another subtle fallacy is to draw conclusions from unaccepted premises that the listener has never agreed to. The speaker assumes, "We all agree that social order is more important than freedom." But not everyone believes that. When a common foundation doesn't truly exist, every conclusion built upon it is merely a sandcastle. Drawing conclusions from unaccepted assumptions is an act of manipulating consent. It makes listeners feel as though they are nodding to truth, when in fact they are merely caught in a game of words. When the asterisk middle term in an argument is not properly connected asterisk, reason collapses in silence. People say, "All good people can read, and all people who can read have the right to vote, so all good people have the right to vote." It sounds logical, but the middle link doesn't truly connect the two incorrect formal structures in reasoning. This is the coldest type of fallacy. It doesn't evoke emotion, doesn't require philosophy. It's simply a structural error that shatters the entire logical edifice. Some people reject a solution because it's not perfect ***. They say, "If this measure can't completely eliminate the problem, then don't do anything at all." But in reality, perfection doesn't exist, only progress. Demanding perfection is a subtle way to avoid action. People make excuses that it's not good enough to avoid doing anything, and the world continues to stagnate while they deem themselves wise. When *authority is used instead of evidence ***, truth is replaced by status. That celebrity said it, so it must be true. But fame does not translate into knowledge. A sports expert cannot determine truth in medicine, nor can a politician decide the laws of physics. Substituting credibility for reason is an act of a society that reveres symbols more than substance. It creates a sense of security when trusting someone of high status, even if what they say is merely an amplified illusion. And finally, people believe in something simply because they want it to be true. They think, "This world must be fair because if not, how can we live?" This belief proves nothing but the fragility of instinct. The wishful thinking fallacy is the refusal of reason to mature. When we choose hope over evidence, comfort over truth, there's nothing wrong with hope, but hope is not evidence. When what is good becomes the standard for what is right, truth is held hostage by desire. So, from false compromise to wishful thinking, the journey of reason comes to an end. Humans begin with a desire for understanding and end with a desire for comfort. In every argument, they speak to win, listen to refute, and believe to be safe. But the truth, cold, naked, and without flattery, stands there, waiting for someone daring enough to look it straight in the eye. Because ultimately, the winner in any argument is not the best debater, but the one who dares to admit when they are wrong. This book doesn't teach us how to speak well. It teaches us to recognize the moments when we are unknowingly lying. It doesn't encourage arguing to win, but to see the fragile mechanism of reason, which can be bent by a single misplaced word, an uncontrolled emotion, or a stronger need to be right than to understand. Learning to identify fallacies doesn't make us better at arguing, but makes us more careful when speaking, when believing, and even when silent. Perhaps the deepest lesson lies here. Truth never wins with noise. It exists silently only in those who dare to doubt themselves. Fallacies don't just live in lecture halls or parliaments, but in every daily conversation, when we want to protect our ego more than the truth, when we choose comfort over accuracy. If logic is a sword, then honesty is the hand that wields it. Without it, every argument can become violence. But then we must ask ourselves, in how many arguments of our lives did we truly want to find what was right, or just wanted others to admit we were right? When we hear something we disagree with, do we pause to consider if we might be wrong, or do we quickly erect emotional barriers? And if one day the truth turns to look at us, will we have the courage not to turn away?